This is Steve Jewin for MMA Mania. This interview with John Salter was recorded on May 31st, 2016. He will be facing the Bull, Brandon Halsey, the former middleweight champion, on June 17th. Steve Jewin, MMA Mania.
All right, John, you are on with Steve from MMA Mania. Go ahead, Steve.
John, it's a pleasure to talk to you. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm just fine. You did fight Dustin Jacoby, and you won that fight by rear naked choke. So why has it been such a long time since we've seen you then? Because it's been over a year.
Yeah, coming out of that fight, I had some injuries that I acquired. I had neck surgery right before that fight, came back, fought, and picked up a lot of injuries. And I wanted to fight right away after that fight. I moved to North Carolina and pretty much went right back into training camp, trying to be ready all the time to fight. I was training 3-4 times a day, and I just got more and more broken down. And I told Bellator I'm ready to go at any time, and they ended up, after a couple of months, offering me a fight. And it was by that point I just kind of broke my body down, and I had some injuries that were pretty significant that I felt like I couldn't come back and fight and be 100%. So I took time to get over that.
All right, so classic case of you live and learn. You learn not to overtrain from that experience then.
Exactly.
I know you got to know a little bit about training really hard and maybe perhaps too hard because you're a collegiate wrestling champion, so I'm sure you had some grueling sessions back in those days as well.
Oh, yeah, and I think wrestlers, we always have that problem because in college wrestling, anything that's not going right, your coach tells you to work harder. And I think that's something that I brought into MMA, and it was good for me. It made me better, but at the same time, it led to a lot of injuries because there's days I think when you need to say, okay, I'm only going to train one time today. And that's hard for me to do. I have that mindset of, it's noon. I can't be done training. I got to get 2 or 3 more sessions in. And that's something where it's really hard for me to stop and say, I'm not going to do that. But I think it's better for my career. I think more fighters are seeing that sometimes you just got to say, one session or light sessions today, and that's it. And it took me a long time to learn that.
Well, I feel like there's a parallel here in this fight between you and Brandon Halsey then, because not only are you both excellent collegiate amateur wrestlers before you got into mixed martial arts, he had a little problem with overtraining and coming into a fight injured that caused him to miss weight with Kendall Grove. But I'm guessing that's not going to be a problem for you in this fight.
No, my weight's looking good. I'm sure that he's got it figured out and taking care of his too, so I don't look at that being an issue.
But how do you feel about knowing that you're going up against such an excellent wrestler, similar in background to yourself?
I think it's good. I think I'm ready for this. I like it. I think that wrestling is something he relies on a lot, and which I did that for a long time in my career, but I think now I don't have to rely on it as much. I can use it defensively to win a fight.
Looks like you've become more of a submission artist of late. The choke with Jacoby and fights in other organizations before that. It seems like that's really become your weapon of choice now. Yeah,
I'm a black belt. I've been a black belt for almost 3 years in jiu-jitsu. I like to compete in jiu-jitsu. I love it. So it's something that I feel like I've come a long way with that. I'm comfortable anywhere, top or bottom on the mat. And I think that's something where I'm dangerous as soon as it touches the mat.
Would you say that your experience in UFC also led you to develop to become a black belt? Because some of those fights that you had in UFC, maybe things didn't go your way and you probably thought, man, I got to get better at this.
Yeah, I went into the UFC pretty early in my career, and I always knew that jiu-jitsu was something I really enjoyed, something I want to get better at. And I thought at that time, I guess, that I was good at jiu-jitsu, but now looking back, I kind of laugh at myself over that because that was a long time ago and a lot of training ago. But it definitely showed me, especially against Dan Miller, that I need to be the kind of wrestler that I am with the kind of jiu-jitsu that he has. And then I thought, when I get to that point, I'll be a dangerous fighter, Obviously, along the way, I want to bring my stand-up to the same level as my ground game. And I've done a lot of work on that, too.
It seems like your overall game is really starting to come together because you're on a 3-fight win streak now, and you're facing a former champion, so it seems like the time is ripe now for all that to come together.
I think so. I think this is a perfect opportunity for me, and I think God's laid this out, and kind of all my hard work's going to come to fruition.
Well, what did you think of the former champion's last fight that he had with Rafael Cavallo? Did you get a chance to see that fight?
Yeah, I've seen it. I think that obviously it shows that he can be beat. I think that it's something I've got to be real careful of. It's easy for me to go, oh man, okay, he won with a body kick, so I'm going to come out there and throw 10 body kicks, I've got to be real careful of that and realize that I'm a different fighter. I have a different style, and I've got to make my own game plan to come out and win this fight.
And conversely, I think some people wish that Rafael Cavallo had thrown a few body kicks in his last fight. I don't think that was the fight with Melvin Manoof that people were looking for.
Yeah, I guess everybody expected that to come out and just be a knockout pretty quick.
Yeah, I think fireworks. I think fans were expecting either Manoof or Cavallo would land one big shot in the first round, and that's not what we got.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite way of winning? Do you like that kind of excitement where you land that knockout in the first round, or do you like the long, drawn-out fights? What's your preference?
I want to get in and get out. I don't want to be, I always prepare for a decision. You got to be ready for that because everybody's tough. Right? You don't really get easy fights anymore. But at the same time, I really like that good feeling of hitting somebody really hard or landing a good head kick, At the same time, I love jiu-jitsu. I love to submit people. So either way, the main thing is getting in there, finding a way to finish it and get out. Because the longer you're in there, the more possibility there is of bad things happening.
That's very true. Now, with all the different organizations you've been in, Strikeforce, UFC, Bellator, all around the horn, do you have any fight that stands out as your favorite among all of those so far?
Oh, man, of my favorites, I think I like the Jacoby fight. I feel like I did well in that. I had a game plan that I stuck very well to, and Jacoby is a guy that everybody looks at his kickboxing and says, okay, he's a striker, but he's very hard to submit. And if you look at his career, you'll see that, how hard it was for people to handle him on the ground. So I thought that was a good fight for me. Caleb Starnes, I think, was a good fight for me, but I do feel like I learned the most probably from my fight against Dan Miller, which was a loss. Not necessarily my best fight, but I think I learned the most from that.
So you believe in that old philosophy, you learn more from a loss than a win?
Yeah, I try to come out of every win, and I try to sit down right after and say, what did I do wrong? Where could he have beat me if he'd have seen it? And what can I do to make sure that's flawless? So I try to learn from every fight, but obviously when you have a loss, that's something that sticks with you for years, and you don't ever forget about it, and you realize what kind of mistakes you made and what you got to do to make sure that doesn't happen again.
Well, given that your overall game has continued to improve over the years and you've got a black belt, you've already got that outstanding wrestling base, what do you feel like is left for you to improve on? What do you see that, like, you're going to look at the tape and think, man, I really could have done better in that area?
One thing that I've been working really hard on, but I've got a long way to go, is my boxing. I really want to be one of those guys that everybody's afraid to be on their feet with. I've done a lot of work at that. I've got a long way to go, like I said. And, also on the ground, I feel like I'm always trying to get better there. Like I said, I'm a black belt. I feel like I submit people really quickly, but I also want to be the guy that everybody's terrified to be on the ground with. So I'm always trying to work on getting better there, still wrestling a lot just to make sure I keep that crisp. But I try to have the philosophy of I'm never good enough anywhere. I've always got to be better because I know my opponents are always going to be getting better.
Well, who are the guys that you work with to sharpen up those parts of your game? Who do you work with for the stand-up? Who do you work with for the ground? Who do you look to help you in those areas?
I've got a great boxing coach here that I spend a lot of time with. So that's where I really work on a lot of my hands. Derek Brunson, who's pretty high up in the UFC right now, getting ready, working on his title shot there. He's got a few more to win before he gets that, but he'll get there. He is probably my main training partner. We do every workout together, but we have a handful of other great pros that are in all the time. I've got Jamie Pickett, who's always here. He's a great 185er for me to work with. I've got Chris Sutton, who's a big guy, wrestled heavyweight for NC State, who's a great guy for me to have to kind of emulate the size and strength of Halsey. Another handful of great pros here, and then a lot of college wrestlers that in this area come back and run wrestling programs here, so we get great wrestling here. So I really feel like I've got a great group of guys to train with.
That's very cool to hear. Speaking of great wrestling and getting to see some of those great wrestlers from that area, Bellator runs a show about once a year, a big show in St. Louis. They got another one coming up June 24th, and you wrestled at Lindenwood University. So how great would it be if you got to be on one of those cards in St. Louis?
I would love that. I would love it. And Mark Dickman is actually in Bellator now, just coming off a win. And we wrestled together in college. And that'd be amazing to get to go back fight in Missouri and be on the same card as him.
Well, let's see if that can happen at some point in the future. Bellator will be listening to this, so they got that in mind, and you get a big win here at Bellator 156 in Fresno. They can certainly do that.
Yeah, that's the plan. I go out there, get this win, and start working towards that belt.
And how much is that going to mean to you if you get that title shot with Cavallo? You know, a lot of people might think he's ripe for the picking right now after that last fight.
I feel like that's a good fight for me. Obviously, I don't want to think too much about it because I got to get through Halsey first, but I think that's a good fight for me. There's not much that would mean more than getting that title.
Well, with that said, I want to give you this chance to throw out any plugs, John. Anything you want to mention, sponsors or social media, please go ahead.
I want to thank God for giving me the opportunity and ability. My wife for standing by me all the time when I'm always beat up and tired. And right now, I'm about to finish up my day of training, about to run in here to well below zero cryotherapy. It keeps me healthy. And Max Muscle Wilmington's done a lot to keep me healthy for this fight. So those guys have all helped a lot. And you can find me on Instagram at John Salter MMA. And I'll be posting pictures as the fight gets closer.
All right, and we can also find you on June 17th in Fresno at the Save Mart Center with the Bull, Brandon Halsey.
All right, great. Thank you.
Yep, thank you very much, John.
Thank you, Steve.
You bet. Thank you both.